Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Tombslayer Podcast, the place where we have resurrectional conversation, and indeed, I just made that word up. Okay, so as you can see, for the second time in Tombslayer history, I'm on location at an undisclosed location, which shall not be disclosed unto thee, because I don't want anybody coming knocking on the door. Anyway, I am super excited about the conversation today because it is, okay, you know how sometimes you work with people and you don't really get a chance to have dialogue and conversation and discourse with people, and to get to know the deeper sides of them, all of the different facets of them, and how brilliant they are. I have been working with this lady that's getting ready to come to the stage for years. I've always admired her voice because we sang together in numerous recording sessions for everything from Walt Disney to cruise lines to things that, just all kinds of stuff. This lady's voice is literally the stuff of legend. She's got the kindest heart in the world. She's cool as ice, and her hair color is unmatched. But to get a chance to have conversation with her as of late, when we're doing some recording that we'll talk to you guys about soon, getting a chance to have conversation with her literally opened up a whole different layer. I mean, it's just like going into outer space and seeing all kinds of constellations that you've never dreamed of. Her wisdom, her kindness, her revelation, the simplicity of the way that she sees things and how she interprets and is able to incorporate that wisdom into life in just simple principles is amazing. And so I am so happy to bring my dear friend, Miss Sarah Whittenmore, to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Whittenmore.
Hi. Hi, Khristian.
Sarah, how you doing? Look at your hair color today.
It's red.
It's red. It's red again.
It sure is. Yes. Oh,
You've always been here. Listen, I'm so excited about this conversation because, like I said in the intro, there's a lot of times we get to be in the same space with people, but we really don't know them.
Yeah.
We have conversations about, little things here and there in the space that we do the work, but you don't really know who it is that you're standing next to or standing across from. And so when I got the opportunity to just have conversations with you after we were working recently, literally it excited me to even ask you to be a part of this podcast and for me to interview you, because there's so much wisdom and a wealth of knowledge and understanding and simplicity for life that you have. And I'm just excited to have that on the show today.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm honored.
Yay. So let's jump into it.
Awesome.
Let's jump into it. Okay, so I mentioned that people have heard you in Disney sessions. I mean, if it's hard to go to the park without hearing your voice. It's like, so how long?
Go ahead.
How long were you part of the Disney brand, or like when did you start? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I'm originally from North Carolina. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina, and my husband and I moved down to Florida, to Orlando about 18 years ago, which I can't believe. And immediately just started diving in and pursuing working at Disney. And luckily I got, auditioned and got in the mix and pretty quickly, and started with Voices of Liberty, and which is an a cappella group at Epcot. They perform at the American Adventure. And I've done that for many, many years. And just through really those connections, started to kind of meet people who were very formative in getting into studio singing. And that's something I always knew I wanted to do. I particularly was excited by the challenge of walking into a room and having new music that you don't know, that you have to craft and interpret and create this kind of immediate final product. That always was a very exciting prospect to me.
That excited you?
Absolutely. I mean, it just felt like it would be something that would continue to challenge me as a musician and as a performer, Mm-hmm. Because even though you're not on a stage performing, you're certainly performing behind the microphone, and that's its own kind of environment, right? Yeah. So particularly Tony DeRosa has been a big mentor in my life. And he's a big
Shout out Tony.
Shout out to Tony, and also Michelle Lindahl. It's been
shout out Red.
Huge influences in my life, particularly, especially in the studio. So getting to work with them and be on sessions with them, and of course peers that I admire and love to work with. You being one of them. Yeah, just that's always just been something that I've wanted to do, and I've been fortunate enough to kind of carve a path in that world and be able to do a lot of different themed entertainment and Disney parks all over the world, and I mean other theme parks, cruise ships, like you said, just some of the different things we've gotten to be a part of. It's really little Sarah's dream come true, if I'm completely honest. It never it gets past me how fortunate I am to do this, and I don't take it for granted, so.
Was it always a dream of yours? Like when you were a kid,
Absolutely.
Like how did you know that was the thing?
Absolutely. I literally wrote my first song when I was 3 years old. I always had a musical mind. I learned my alphabet before words because I would listen to the record that my mama put on of Holst's The Planets, the classical symphonic work of the planets. And I would sit there and ask for that music, and I would say, Mars, Jupiter, Venus, and I would say that my planets before anything else. So it's just really yeah. So I've always had a very musical spirit about me. So and as a child, I would always mimic like jingles on TV and learn like commercials and sing them and harmonize, and it was always a part of who I was.
Man, that's beautiful, because I think a lot of people we spend a lot of time. I heard a guy by the name of Dr. Miles Monroe. He is like literally a spiritual mentor of mine. He passed away a couple of years ago, but I remember hearing him saying one time that college cannot impart a gift. It can only polish it. And I think that a lot of people try to do certain things that are not really what their gift is, and they end up polishing the wrong thing. Well, and that's tough, because you spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, a lot of money in spaces that really isn't your gift. So it sounds like you found what your gift was super early.
I did, but I'll tell you, Khristian, an interesting part of my story is that I actually went through a period in college. It's funny you mentioned college, where I kind of deviated from that. And I went through this phase of, I'm more than a singer, and I don't want to be known as a musician. I want to see what other gifts I have, because I do believe that we have many gifts, right? I absolutely. Yeah. But so I majored in psychology, thinking nice. That's what I was going to do. And what I think
Where'd that come from? I don't
know.
You just thought psychology. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I was always curious about the human nature and what makes people do what we do and why. And I think that's kind of what led me down that path. And I did really enjoy it, but something always called me back to music. And, it's kind of that soft, still voice is what I would describe it as, and you could say that's God. You could say it's the Holy Spirit. You could say many things, but like, for me, it was just that inner knowing of like, what really is the essence of me, and what do I really, really want? What makes me tick? What makes me really feel fulfilled? And it was always music. And so I'm glad I answered that call, and I came back to it. And, luckily, over 20 years later, that's my career. And I'm so thankful for that.
Man, that's amazing. And not without challenge, not without difficulty.
Oh, golly.
I remember my first sessions in Orlando, because I had never been in that space before. And something about me, at the end of this, I'll just give you a heads up. At the end, we're going to ask a couple of questions. And one of the questions is, if you had one redo in life, what's something that you would go back and redo? For me, I always come back to the same answer. I would have really invested in my gift, in my craft. I would have, if I had a do-over, I would have spent time, I would have gone to school for music. Mm-hmm. I would have not just depended on my ear to play and to sing. I would have known those notes, because when I walked into those sessions, Sarah, And you're looking at this. You call it a challenge. I call it death becomes him. Because, I mean, you're walking in there and you're standing next to these giants who it's like, okay, everybody looks at the sheet. Okay. Okay, cool. Ready? 2, 3, and you're on in the red. And I'm sitting there like, wait. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And I have to give more, again, shout out to Tony DeRosa, because he was one of those dudes that I would stand next to, and he could quickly tell that I didn't have that level of skill, and he so graciously would either sing my note, sing my part, point out, okay, look at it. I'm looking at the soprano line. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. And it's like, I wish I would have spent the time developing that, so that when I walked into those rooms that I would have been more prepared.
Yep.
It terrified me. Even though I kept saying yes to the sessions, I was afraid. Have you ever been afraid walking into what you believe you're called to do?
Absolutely. And I think that is a really natural part of doing the things that you are supposed to be doing. And I think that can be a misconception sometimes that, it's just going to flow out of me. It's just going to be easy. And there are those moments, right? There are those kind of flow states where everything is working and everything is really feeling very intuitive and natural. But there also are huge roadblocks sometimes, and challenges and hills that you have to climb. And I've always heard, and I really have even experienced this lately in my life, that I've heard, just when things kind of feel like they're getting harder and scarier and more volatile at times is when you're about to level up. And so I would say sometimes you have to put yourself in those kind of pressure cooker environments to challenge yourself and know that you actually can do it, and also believing. And I would say this to you, to kind of your story, Khristian, is that you were asked to be in that room, right? The people that hired you trusted that you were the person they wanted in that room. And I think remembering that in those times when you're faced with fear, remembering that when you might feel insecure, you might feel like you're not enough or you feel inadequate, if you can remember that, I think that can really allow you to harness an inner strength that you didn't know was there. And that's really important,
Yeah, I appreciate you for saying that, because you're exactly right. It's funny. People sometimes, the things they do outside of those rooms that put their names in the people's mouths that hired them to get in the room, sometimes they stand on that and they walk into those rooms with arrogance and pride and all this other kind of stuff. And so I remember a couple of times walking into those sessions, and like in the very beginning, and either Sarah Moore or Michelle would be like, yeah, he sings Take 6. And I'm like, now, great, thanks.
Yeah. Oh no, the pressure's on. And you do, exactly. And so, and all of that makes up who you are as a performer. And I think that's really important to remember. And also too, something I feel like I've learned so much from session singing in particular is it's a team sport. We're all in it together. Yes, there are strengths that each person brings, but really it's about working together and creating, this group sound, and then of course there's times when you do solos and things like that. But when you're in that group environment, it's critical that you lean on one another, and we're only as good as our willingness to help one another, right? I mean, yeah. So you will only sink the ship if you're not working with your teammate. So it's critical.
I also think that it's important to point out here that there's a saying now, it's like, do it scared. Do it afraid. Some people avoid new challenges because quite frankly, they don't want to suck. They don't want to be in a position where people can see them not at their best. And I think that is one of the greatest enemies of better is comfort. Because for me, Sarah, I was so comfortable in the church environment where everybody, take mistakes for love. That's a phrase, a common phrase, Oh, that's all right. That's all right, baby. That's all right. You don't know the words. You're like,
right.
You're singing a song. You forgot the hymn. And it's like, that's all right, baby. That's all right. The Lord, let him use you. All this other kind. And so I've gotten comfortable. I had gotten comfortable with not being excellent.
Yeah. Wow.
This is tough to say, but it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The standard in a lot of those circles was really low. Mm-hmm. You can get up there and not know the lyrics. Mm-hmm. You can get up there and not know the song. You can get up there and not be warmed up. You can crack. You can, whatever. You can mess up and stuff like that and still be applauded, still be celebrated, and still, oh man, the Lord, let him use you. Let him use you. Now that's all right. And so then if you're not careful, that will become your standard.
Sure.
That will become your reason and your excuse for not being excellent. Because, hey, well, take all mistakes for love. Mm-hmm. No, I'm taking your mistakes for lack of preparation. I'm taking your mistakes for, and that's tough because we don't know, we're not taught that in those circles because there's a huge amount of grace. But yeah, there's excellence too.
Right.
Let David take that slingshot, mm-hmm. and I'm getting ready to sneeze, and it's going to come at any moment. I can feel it. I feel it. You know how you?
I do.
Then it just went away. It's waiting because it knew I was coming. Now it went back, and so right when I'm in the mid sentence, it's gonna be like,
I'm sure it will.
So you're David. Take that sling, and hadn't been working out with it, mm-hmm. and miss Goliath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We gonna take that mistake for love? No, he's a dead man. He had to be ready for that moment. And I think that there are certain spaces that we walk into that are moments that we're not prepared for because we didn't put enough emphasis on getting ready, staying ready, being ready, and not accepting anything other than excellence in those moments.
Wow, I love that. I love the phrase that you just said, ready for the moment, because I've had so many people over the years ask me how I got into session singing, and it is kind of a bit more of a niche land that we kind of live in, right? And it is kind of a more at times smaller group of individuals that do it. I mean, there's plenty of room for new faces and new people to come in and learn how to do this. I think that's fantastic and really important that we're always welcoming new people into session work. But a lot of times you keep seeing the same people over and over and over again. And I think part of that, part of the culture of that is that in theory, the people in that room are ready for the moment. Right?
Ooh.
Because you have to, on a moment's notice, be able to be a chameleon. 1 minute you might be sounding like a character voice, and then the next minute you might be doing an operatic run, or 5 minutes later you might be doing kind of a choral sound, or you might be doing a gospel feel, or rock, or really the sky's the limit, and that's the joy, but also the challenge of being a studio singer is you can be asked to do all those things within a 2-hour period sometimes. So, you have to be ready for the moment. And I think that I always say this when I talk to different groups and things like that like, and you can't really practice for a session because you don't know the music and you're coming and reading it cold. But there are things that you can do to prepare for moments like that. And I always say too, like, people talk to me about like different performance tips and things like that. And, how do you handle your nerves and how do you handle these kind of high pressure performance environments? Like, and I've said many times, and I think there's a lot of truth in this, is practice to performance. And that's a phrase that I use a lot with coaching and things like that, because if you're not practicing your song, let's say you're singing a solo at church, even let's use that as an example.
Yeah.
If the first time you do that song is in front of the whole congregation, you're up there by yourself, you've not used that microphone before, and you're standing in a different spot, and the lights are different, and there's a buzzing that you hear in the room. All of these things can be a distraction, right? So if you really want to be a present, embodied performer, and really in the moment and be able to deliver whatever song or message you're trying to deliver, you need to be as prepared as you can for that environment. So I literally set up pretend stages in my house, or, practice singing a song in all these different ways, distracted, or, doing chores or doing this, so that it's so much in a part of me that I'm not even having to think twice about it, you know? Kind of deviated a little bit from the studio thing, but I think that's something that kind of,
no, it's great.
Yeah, kind of relates in a way, because it's about that preparedness, and then that's only going to allow you in those environments to shine and as authentically as you can. And then hopefully somebody might notice that, and you might be able to have new opportunities in your career, or, you know, be noticed by somebody and have a connection and start a new, you know, collaboration or something. You just never know what's possible, but you got to do the work, you know, and that's how you make it look easy, I guess, right? Is you got to put the work in.
Nobody sees how the shots that Steph Curry takes until he's on television.
Right.
Like, you know, I'm a huge NBA fan, and we'll go to the Magic games, and when you're leaving the Kia Center, if you go to I guess it's down Division, you'll pass this other building that has the Magic logo on it as well. It's not as big as the Kia Center, but that's where they work out. That's where they train. That's where they're practicing, in the practice facility. And cameras aren't in there. Mm-hmm. The cameras are there when you know, when they're playing whoever they're playing that night and the place is full with 17,000 people and da-da-da. But you can't be ready for that moment if you haven't been in that smaller room. All right, good people, listen up now. If you enjoyed that episode, trust me, there's a lot more where that came from. So make sure you subscribe to Tombslayer YouTube page, because you don't want to miss one of these conversations. You don't want to miss this sweet, sweet hat game either now.